Okay, so yesterday we started a complex writing task where we were kind of reviewing the text that we've been reading over the last few weeks. So you had to think about the genres of the text that we've read in the module that we've had. Those were all fantasy, realistic fiction, play, and poetry. How are those genres alike and how are they different? And what makes each genre unique? Now here's your actual task. Write an expository essay, which is informational, telling how each genre affects the way a story is told. Use evidence from the module selections to support your expository essay. And we had the story Airborne, The Secret Garden, The Miracle of Spring, and then The Poem That Would Not End. All right, or The Poem That Will Not End is the title of it. All right, so what I did is I started an example writing, and I took this exact prompt from the Google Classroom assignment and I copied it and I put it on the top of my document. All right, just so that I could go in and look and work with it. So right here, think about the genres in the text that you read in this module. So here I highlighted, we've got fantasy, realistic fiction, play, and poetry. All right, fantasy, realistic fiction, play, and poetry. How are these genres alike? How are they different? What makes each one unique? And then here's the task. I need to focus on how each genre affects the way a story is told. All right, that's what my focus is. And I want to be able to use evidence. All right, so I started with an introduction. That's going to be the first paragraph. In that introduction, I put in here, stories are told in many different ways, which is quite helpful for readers. Could you imagine if all stories were told in the same way? The different genres add a sense of uniqueness to each story. Fantasy stories bring in unrealistic and imaginative characteristics, while realistic fiction stories mimic real-life situations. There, I created a a little bit of a contrast between fantasy and realistic fiction. And now I still need to go and I need to add a blurb about play and poetry in there to give a little bit of a snip of what those are like. All right. Now, as you work on this, I want you to keep in mind that this is an informational text. So if we think about the letter I, all right, we need to start with our introduction, which is what we just looked at right here. Okay, the example that I just started typing up, that first paragraph is my introduction. All right, usually when we have an introduction, we want to kind of have some sort of hook. We want to have a way to capture the reader's attention, which is what I did with those first two sentences. Nothing extravagant, but I wanted to come up with a way to capture the reader's attention. Could you imagine if all stories were told the same way? All right. Now, the biggest part or the longest part of my text is going to be the actual information. Okay, so this is my intro. This part is my info, my information. All right, so this is where I'm going to get into my information. All right, so I need to go in and I need to talk about some of the details of the fantasy. How does the fantasy details, how does it affect the way a story is told? And I need to give some evidence or some examples to go with that. And I need to do the same thing with realistic fiction, play, and poetry. All right, once I do that, I'm going to end by giving a quick little conclusion, and I might just do it as just a sentence on that last paragraph. Usually the conclusion isn't all that big. Our meat of everything, what holds up our writing, is that information piece. Those middle pieces where we're giving all of that information that answers the prompt that we're given, how each genre affects the way a story is told. If you have any questions or need some help, feel free to come into study hall this afternoon.